want to show you something.
Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything
Could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
All right, good morning to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh, where anything can happen and does happen and will happen. This morning we had another anomaly, and that's why we're getting off to a bit of a late start. Oh, actually, probably one of the latest starts we've ever had. 10 minutes into what would be the show. But anyways, we're going to have a show nonetheless. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for waiting. Those who have been waiting for the show and just probably wondering, oh, probably not going to have a show today. But yes, we are. So thanks again for being here. We are going to make the best of it with the short amount of time that we have. So let's dive right in. We got lots in store. We'll get started with the weather, and we'll be back right after this. Sudbury weather brought to you by sudburyweather.ca, and currently it is 15 degrees Celsius. It's mostly cloudy. Today we can expect cloudy with a 60% chance of showers, high of 23, humidex 28, UV is 5 or moderate. Tonight it's cloudy, 40% chance of showers. This evening fog patches developing over night and low of 15 tonight. Friday cloudy with a 60% chance of showers. Risk of thunderstorms in the afternoon, fog patches dissipating in the morning, and high of 25. The humidex 30, or the UV index is 5, or whatever. So the extended forecast is 60% chance of showers, high of 25. Saturday and Sunday looking to be nice with sunny. High of 20, high of 21 for the weekend, and Monday, high of 22, a mix of sun and cloud. Tuesday, cloudy, 20 degrees, and Wednesday, 22 is your high, mix of sun and cloud. Look at your satellite. When would this have been taken? 3:30 a.m., so it's rather recent, 4 hours ago or so. Lots of cloud and activity. Hopefully by the weekend, though, that'll all be gone. And hopefully the forecast is correct with that. So we're looking forward to a nice weekend. We'll be back with news headlines and a lot more right after this. Okay, and so thanks for bearing with us this morning. Got off to a little bit of a late start, and but it's something that's always able to be found out unless it's not, and able to be worked out unless it's not. But we were able to do that today, so thanks. Good morning, Monique. Thanks for being with us. Good morning, Sudbury. Judy is joining us. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Tracy, good morning to all. Maurice, good morning. Thanks for being with us as well. So we are live, we're here, and we got some local news to talk about, and then we got some other news to talk about as well. Lots in store for the show today. Sudbury Cyclones soccer is back in action. We covered this story the other day, but it's in Sudbury.com's Stories to Start Your Day. Built as the elite men's soccer team, the Sudbury Cyclones men's soccer team will soon call Greater Sudbury home. Soccer is more than just a game. It's a global phenomenon right now that's uniting the world and people from everywhere. Sudbury Wolves Sports and Entertainment owner Dario Zulich told local reporters during the media conference yesterday, "We believe Sudbury is ready to embrace the world-class sport. The SWSE is introducing League One Ontario's newest team to the Nickel City," and shared the latest developments during Wednesday's media conference at the Sudbury Arena. Central to the press conference was the introduction of Dana Corelli as the team's general manager, and Connor Van Wey as the team's sporting director. So there you go, Sudbury Cyclones. We also have other sports news. Let's see here. Keeping with sports, David Goyette gears up for the final OHL season for the Sudbury Wolves. He believes that the Sudbury Wolves will have a good shot this year. So let's see if he is correct on that. And if you don't have your season's tickets or your memberships by now, make sure to get out there and get them. It'll be a great season. Sudbury area athletes driven to compete. Local runners, paddlers, golfers, all to expand Masters Indigenous Games, off to expand Masters Indigenous Games in Ottawa. Expanded Masters Indigenous Games in Ottawa. So there's some local athletes going there. You can find that story in the Sudbury Star. Also the Beaton, what is it called? Let's just click on here. Sarah McIrith, I believe is how you pronounce the name, is getting better with age. The Beaton Classic. Man, that took a lot of my brain's energy this morning to come up with that. So as many as of the top city athletes gathered for the 2023 Beaton Classic just over a week ago, many questions remain to be answered, and one, generally speaking, did not. The winner of the women's solo bracket was almost a foregone conclusion, having raced the event on an individual basis no less than 13 times, including this year, and having finished first in her category far, far more often than not in that bracket. The newsworthy part of following the accomplishments of Sarah McIrith lie in the wonder of just what kind of specialness she will unveil next. Her 50th birthday behind her, the woman who would have placed in the top third of the men's grouping is showing absolutely no signs of slowing down, which is not to say that her races year after year are exactly reproductions of one another. So you can catch more of that story on Sudbury.com and back to Sudbury.com. This is interesting here. News headline. Greater Sudbury Police Services seek victim witnesses after incident on Paris Street. So the victim and witnesses. Greater Sudbury Police are asking for the victim or witnesses to come forward in relation to an alleged violent incident that took place on Paris Street yesterday. Well, this was a couple days ago now, when a man was grabbed by another man and thrown into traffic. Police are reporting that just after 3 p.m. on August the 22nd, they received a call in relation to a serious assault that had just taken place on the eastbound sidewalk of Paris Street between Cedar and Larch in Greater Sudbury. The caller advised police that around 2:50 p.m., they were driving their truck northbound on Paris Street when they witnessed a man grabbing another man and throwing him in front of the caller's oncoming vehicle. The caller said they were able to apply their brakes in time to stop before nearly hitting the man who had been thrown into the roadway. Police are appealing to the victim and to any witnesses who were in the area at the time of the incident to please come forward. You can contact Sudbury Police. Just Google how to contact Sudbury Regional Police or Sudbury Police Services, and you will be able to find that information and contact them. So there you have it. Some local headlines, some more people joining us this morning. Let's see who's on here. Mickey Marnin, hope you're having a great Thursday morning. Hey, cool. Mickey, thanks for joining us. First time I've seen you commenting on the show, so thanks for being with us. Hope you're able to get something out of the show and continue to comment. Any ideas you have for the show or ideas you have on the topics that we're talking about on the show. Good morning, Shane. Thanks for being with us. And thanks for the show yesterday. You did an incredible job. And hopefully we'll see you back next Wednesday for more commentary on local news and news abroad. Jerome, good morning. Sudbury, Dave, has anyone figured out how an island in the middle of an ocean has run out of water, as reported here yesterday. So that's a question from Dave posed to any of you. If you have an answer for Dave, he's looking for that answer. Happy Thursday, Pauline. Yes, Pauline, thanks for joining us today. I got the weather in, even though we got off to a late start this morning. It's always interesting how we're looked at, abroad from our country and what we're doing and how people from outside view Canada and the leadership, because we're in Canada, right? And right now we're kind of like under a news ban. Everyone has a different take on it, but it's kind of like a news blackout in some ways, like a partial news blackout, if you will. Our news has been, if you look at it as a wheel, a stick has been thrown in the spokes of it. The bike is still skidding forward, but just things have been going on with Bill C-11, Bill C-18, the Online News Act, and the way that Meta and Google have been, or Alphabet Corp, I guess you can say, Meta and Alphabet Corp. Meta, who has Facebook and Instagram, Alphabet, who has Google and YouTube, the way that they're handling the sharing of news, basically not sharing it anymore, or sharing it in different forms. Certain news can be shared still, as you notice, as you're online and you're looking around, you're wondering to yourself, why is this being able to be shared and why is that not able to be shared? Anyways, they have their rhyme and reason, and it's being played out before our eyes. Nonetheless, news is affected in the way that we consume it, whatever your view is on how it came to be or why it is the way that it is. I get real news from real people in real places. Anything government, I just go to CPAC. Oh, that's perfect. Exactly. Go right to the horse's mouth. If you got the time, first of all, because it's really, you got to watch a lot of it to hear everything in its entireness. And that's usually the best way to get the most out of it, right? But you got to have time. And that's what we hoped that news was supposed to be. People who were paid had the time, that was their profession, to get out and really understand the topics and what people were saying and be able to disseminate it to the public for us in a way that was unbiased, and so that we can understand the world in which we're living in. I don't know if news has ever been 100% that way, but that's the idea, right? That's what we're hoping. If we had a transparent world, that's the way that it would be. But it's interesting how other, countries view Canada. And there's a show called Redacted, which I really appreciate. They are journalists themselves. And, and so they give news now, and they give it with commentary, which is the way a lot of us consume our news, is we watch it through people, not just CPAC, which you can go to the horse's mouth to watch it, but others that we kind of rely on, that we can kind of trust with their perspective on the news, right? Heck, we can't even get local news stations like this to talk about important fires in this country. If you don't report it, it didn't happen. So that's Dave. You'll know him from his comments on this show. So yes, thanks for that, Dave. And right now we're going to be finding out who's in charge of the country and what Redacted's view is on our current leadership anyways. And I think it's appropriate, and I think it's a lot of Canadians share their views as well, but it's not, it's often not reported that way in our news for some strange reason.
All right, let's talk about our favorite dictator up north in Canada, Justin Trudeau, who is, I think, trying to rewrite history. And he's right now actively trying to gaslight all of us about what his role was in COVID, about vaccines, tyranny, lockdowns, the whole 9 yards.
Well, he's pretending that he has always been super empathetic about people who had vaccine hesitancy, that he was easy on those people. He had an understanding about it. This comes from a discussion last week with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. We're going to play it, and we may have to stop him because we just can't stand it to hear these lies.
He's a weasel.
And then we're going to show you, we're just going to rewind the tape and let him contradict his self. So let's let him speak if you can take it.
Misinformation and disinformation is carrying people to believe things that are untrue. And vaccinations is a perfect example of it. Like any modern bit of medical advancements, there are potential side effects in vaccinations.
Oh, thanks for telling us now. Really?
There are people who've probably gotten very sick from vaccinations.
Oh.
Billions of people who've been vaccinated against COVID over the past few years. There are far more people who obviously have died due to COVID. Died from not
His
getting
body
vaccinated.
language is so like, it's very,
It's condescending.
yeah.
And the
It's
idea
like, so some people,
Yeah. So
Get
some
sick.
people,
Some
some people
people
got
get
sick.
really sick.
These losers who got sick, but
Yeah.
you know what?
that people can fly in the face of science, well, individuals are allowed to make their own choices. There may be all sorts of different
Are
reasons why
they?
someone is hesitant to get vaccinated. But I make a distinction, and I have always have,
Yeah.
between someone choosing for personal reasons to choose not to get vaccinated and someone deliberately using misinformation
What?
to mislead and scare other people with so-called facts that aren't facts at all.
What the hell are you talking about?
I don't know. So he's trying to draw these two distinctions between someone who doesn't want to get vaccinated for personal reasons. That personal reason could be because you read,
Yeah, you're educated.
and someone who uses misinformation not to get vaccinated. Now, that means that someone who uses misinformation is someone who uses information that the government doesn't like. That's really the only way to parse out these two groups of people. So these two unvaccinated groups, one group has personal reasons and the other group has things that they read that they find data points that the government doesn't like. That's the only way I can distinguish.
So how
these
is that
groups.
any different than personal reasons? Right?
Well, because you got to show your work. It's like math class. You got to show your work. You may have got to the right answer, but you didn't do it the right way.
So if the little old grandma
example.
over there is like, no, I just don't want to do it because I don't want to do it, he's fine with that. But if the other person over there, the other little old grandma is like, I don't want to do it because you know what? I've been watching the show Redacted and I've been learning and I've been seeing what this could do to my body. And so I don't want to do that. That's who he has a problem with.
I suppose that's a tale of two grannies.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find like sweet old grandmas as an example. And he's deciding that because someone has information that the government doesn't like, that's a person that falls in this other second bucket.
I suppose. And he's pretending that he was so empathetic and kind and gentle on these personal reasons groups. I never saw anything like that. I never saw any kindness to any distinction between people who did not want, I refuse to use the word anti-vaxxer. I hate it.
Well, I mean,
he was even harsh on some of the truckers who were vaxxed.
Well, I was going to say they were very gentle. They were very gentle when they seized those truckers' bank accounts and their PayPals, and like they were very gentle about it. They were very nice. Like, I'm sorry, I have to take your money.
It's personal.
I have to.
It's not personal, actually, they said.
Yeah, so it's not a personal decision, I guess.
That lead them to make a choice that endangers their lives and the lives of other citizens.
Yeah,
So as Prime Minister, through the greatest public health crisis that we've faced in 100 years in this country, since the Spanish flu, my responsibility was to keep as many Canadians alive as possible. And all of the scientists and the medical experts and the researchers, not just in Canada, but around the world, understood that vaccination was going to be the way through this.
Except for the ones that you didn't allow to speak, who completely contradicted your experts. All of the medical experts who were allowed to testify before Congress, but then were banned and blocked on social media and deplatformed. What about those people? or your World Economic Forum approved medical experts, your Klaus Schwab approved medical experts that were allowed to speak in Canada and not silenced. Those people?
And therefore, while not forcing anyone to get vaccinated,
Not
chose
forcing
to
anyone,
make
he says.
sure that all the incentives and all the protections were there to encourage Canadians to get vaccinated.
He never asked anyone, never forced anyone to get vaccinated.
I mean, he literally said, you will not travel this year to see any family members or for business if you're not vaccinated, except under some extreme exemptions.
Yeah.
He literally said, you're not going anywhere unless you have. So, okay, not forcing, right? But he certainly made life uncomfortable if you didn't want to.
I mean,
maybe he doesn't know the meaning of the word encouraged. Like, you keep using that word, but
Yeah.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Right.
Does he go on?
A little bit longer.
And that's exactly what they did. We got vaccinated to a higher level than just about any other of our peer countries. And that's why we had a less deadly pandemic than most other countries.
Now, here he's pretending how understanding he was about people who didn't want to get vaccinated for personal reasons. He never made that distinction during the heart of the pandemic. Here is a quote from 2021. This is December of 2021. And he went on a French TV show, Western Standard. And so, because I don't speak French, I'm going to show you the transcript of it. He says, we all know people who are deciding whether or not they are willing to get vaccinated, and we will do our very best to try to convince them. However, there is still a part of the population that is fiercely against it. Now, keep in mind, he's talking about a part of the population that doesn't want to get vaccinated. They don't believe in science progress. They are often very misogynistic and racist. So he here is saying that people who don't want to get vaccinated are often misogynist and racist. He says this leads us as a leader and as a country to make a choice. Do we tolerate these people? So he's saying he was super sensitive about it. Here he's asking himself if he should even tolerate their existence. He says over 80% of the population in Quebec have done their duty by getting the shot. They are obviously not the issue in this situation. So I don't think this is the language of someone who was sensitive to people who didn't want to get vaccinations for personal reasons. He also said at the time of the trucker convoy that Canadians who protested vaccine mandates held unacceptable views, and he called them fringe minority. Watch this.
Canadians have stepped up to do the right thing to protect the freedoms and the rights of Canadians to get back to the things we love to do. We know the way through this pandemic is by getting everyone vaccinated. And the overwhelming majority, close to 90% of Canadians, have done exactly that. The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
They're holding unacceptable views.
Do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Yeah, you communist. So these opinions that we don't agree with, these opinions that are unseemly,
Right.
the fringe minority. You guys are on the fringe.
Well, he was so, you're not following the science. But now when the Canadian government has been pushed about what science they use to instate certain mandates and travel lockdowns, they have not been able to show that they had science guiding those decisions in the first place. And in fact, if we could just skip forward to the last video, I want to show you this that he put forward, and we have never seen science on this. Here is Trudeau telling 5-year-olds that once they have their 5-year birthday, they can have some cake and they can have a vaccine. And I'm wondering where he got that science while he was being so sensitive to people who may not have had the vaccine. Watch this.
You're going to be able to get your vaccine as soon as you turn 5. And I know you're excited and I know you're eager. In some places across the country, you can even start making your appointment now for shortly after your birthday.
Oh my God, that makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah. Hey, little 4-year-old.
Hey guys, here's the Prime Minister on a Zoom call here in this classroom. And I know you guys are super excited about getting your vaccines. Like little 5-year-olds are like, what? No, I don't want
to get a shot.
No, I want to play with Play-Doh.
My 6-year-old got one of those finger prick tests last week just for a blood test and freaked out as if it were a scandal. There is nothing that any celebrity could say to get her excited about any vaccine, even if it were Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
Eve would not be very excited about that.
Like he's there like a clown, like at your kid's birthday party. Yes, we're gonna do some juggling here, guys. We're gonna do some balloon animals, and you're gonna get your vaccine. Kids be like, what the hell? Get me out of here! No.
Creating division with kids. We know kids tease each other about things like, anyway, I got my vaccination and you didn't. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
I don't know. If my daughter saw this video and be like, hey, Eve, guess who's on, this Zoom call, to convince you to get your COVID vaccine. And then I put her on here, it's Justin Trudeau. This is what she did with class at home a lot. She was like, nope.
Yeah,
she would walk away.
She's like, no way, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Hey, Barack Obama is doing a FaceTime call, Eve. Barack Obama wants to talk to you. And who's all right? Okay, Barack Obama, the president of the United States. Hi, Eve. It's Mr. President, President Obama. You are very lucky. You just turned 5. You get to go and get your very first shot. She would go, mommy, and she'd throw the phone down. No kid is excited at that. It's propaganda.
They jabbed Elmo and Big Bird.
Yeah, and they were paid to do that. I mean, it's like it made the U.S. taxpayers foot the bill for Sesame Street to do COVID propaganda. Unbelievable. This weasel. So we will hold him accountable. He's trying to gaslight and rewrite history as to what his involvement was, of course, in pushing vaccines and telling us all, and then, of course, calling you racist or misogynist if you didn't want to get it done. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at.
So yeah, and for all you people that have your heads so far in the sand that you can't even see your feet coming out of the ground, I worked for the federal government during this time, and I saw the writing on the wall, and I knew what was coming, and so I had to find another job quickly because I knew it was coming, and they mandated all federal employees to get the vaccine, or they did not have a job with the federal government. Do you remember that at all? Mandated means forcing. Coercing? Well, yeah. Well, I guess forcing would mean armed people coming to your door, kicking it down with a gun to your head and putting the needle in your arm. They did everything but that. So I guess your interpretation of forcing is up for debate. But you got a family to feed, and you went to school for 10 years to have a certain job. Let's say you were a doctor, and you said, no, this isn't right. The information that I have does not go along with what I'm being told in mainstream media and from the government. And I'm choosing my body, my choice, I thought was the narrative for so many years. I guess it's not anymore, and I'm not able to practice if I don't go along with this. So you're not being forced, but you can't practice what you went to school for, and you have a $300,000 student loan for, and you have a mortgage payment, and you have 5 kids, and you have dependents, and you have all these bills to pay, but you're not being forced. But unless you get this, you cannot provide for your family. Can't travel, have to be locked in your house, all these things, right? And if you thought that was bad, wait for round 2, which is going to be more interesting, right? Because the first one was a really great indicator to all of those of how everything is going to go, and then they know more about this now, right? And so here you have news now being kind of targeted, where information can be shared. Is that a accident, by the way? Misinformation, dangerous information, unless it comes from a very flawed individual and flawed individuals who have all the power. They are not perfect. They don't say everything. Let's look back at all the mistakes that were made in science in the past, and roads we went down, and later were found to be, oh wait, that's not true. The Earth being flat, and a lot of people think it's still flat. We're not going to go there. But now it's round, it's flat one day. You're killed if you say it's round, and then it's, whoa, wait a minute, it's round. And everybody agrees on it. You know what I mean? So that's science. That's the history of science, in oversimplified, by the way. It's more complex than that. It's as simple as it is complex as it is simple. And round 2 coming soon, most likely this fall, Miles is saying. It might be more potent than the first round. So we're not sure, but we're speculating. So in this, I guess, movement to shut down free speech in general, which it's very hard to have free speech. And I understand that even here. I'm wondering if certain individuals are paid to comment on this show sometimes because there's just blatant disregard for common sense, certain certain things that are said and very rudely put to the host, you know what I mean? And taunting and poking. And if it was a schoolyard back in the 4th grade, it would go much differently than it does now with adults speaking to each other, right? But here we are. And so, I would fight to the death to be able to have you have the freedom to disagree with me, basically, is the way where I'm coming from. But there is a ploy to shut down speech in general, and it's being right now played out in front of our eyes with Jordan Peterson, who the courts came down yesterday and said, yes, the Ontario College of Psychologists can force him, or he loses his license. So what do you call that? Coerce him, strongly suggest that he takes this re-education camp. Have you heard that before? To be able to re-educate Jordan Peterson. That's an oxymoron. And how to speak on social media, because apparently he's not educated enough to be able to know how to speak on social media. And so if he doesn't get this re-education through this college, he will then lose his license, something that he went to school for many, many, many years for, built up a reputation, taught it for many years in the University of Toronto. And now they're just going to take it away from him if he doesn't go for re-education, right? So that is what we all should be worried about. You can fight with me and my points of view on here, and all I'm doing is trying to make people aware of what's going on, but you keep reducing it to petty politics and one side against another. Sure, if we're going to have, we need to have politics in the country. And I'm definitely just, it's kind of like a Hail Mary to just get us out of this regime. Get us to the next best thing other than this regime for now. It's almost like the Titanic is sinking. The bow already has water coming over the deck. And you're kind of like in panic mode. We got to do something here quick. So let's just expose what's going on politically, But some people must be being paid. Dave, are you being paid? Like, if you can be honest, are you being paid to come on this show and comment? Or Steven? I sometimes question it because it's interesting, some of the comments, and some people said, yeah, no, there's people that are paid out there because the government does care about this kind of thing. And one tactic they have is to pay people to go on and be what's called trolls or just say things to influence other people. So I just have to ask that. And if you're honest enough and you just want to say, yeah, I'm being paid. But I would think if you were, you wouldn't be honest, because that's just the way things like that work. And hey, I'm all transparent here. I'm not being paid to do what I'm doing. I'm actually paying to do what I do. And anything I say is just my own, coming from my own point of view, not being paid to say it in any way, shape, or form. Good morning, David. Thanks for being with us. Hope you're on a quick recovery over there at York Extendicare. We better stand up for our rights pretty damn soon. Time's running out. Yeah, I feel the same way. And an example of that is Jordan Peterson, one of the most intellectual people that I've come to know. Courts ruling yesterday that he is going to have to face re-education or he will lose his license. Court rules against Jordan Peterson on College of Psychologists case. An Ontario court has ruled against psychologist and author Jordan Peterson, upholding a regulatory body's previous order that he undergo social media training. Mr. Peterson, who is a professor emeritus in the University of Toronto Psychology Department, was ordered by the College of Psychologists of Ontario, the CPO, in November 2022 to undergo a coaching program of professionalism in public statements following a series of online comments by Mr. Peterson it saw as controversial. So the Ontario Court of Appeal ruled that the CPO can pursue their prosecution. If you think that you have the right of free speech in Canada, you're delusional, Mr. Peterson said on the platform X, formerly known as Twitter, following the ruling. I will make every aspect of this public, which I think he should, and we will see what happens when utter transparency is the rule. Bring it on. So transparency, is that a bad thing? Can you say anything bad about someone who says they want something to be transparent? So come out, say it. You shouldn't have transparency. Some things should be done in the dark. Some government things should be done in backdoor deals and things like that for our greater good. Unelected people who should, billionaires should run our world. That's what you believe. And then all the power to you. I mean, that's your right to believe that. You'll see what happens when it actually happens. Morning from McCarroll. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Lynn. Thanks for joining us today. So here you go. I have Jordan Peterson himself speaking in an interview that was given a long, long time ago, but he never changes because he tells the truth. He tells his truth, and he's very educated. So you can't say, well, the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's ahead of in his field, and now you have his association or the College of Psychologists coming down on him because he doesn't believe in their politics. So yeah, they're getting political, and there's a reason for that, and he's going to explain it pretty much right here. So, and we'll have more on this in shows coming up next week as well.
6 years ago, I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Jordan Peterson. This is when he had just entered the public sphere with a video criticizing political correctness. Now, at the time, the interview didn't get much traction because it was before I had Crossroads, and actually before Dr. Peterson became as well known as he is now. But those ideas that we discussed, the underlying problems of postmodernism, how this relates to the communist agenda, the destruction of higher education, and the subversion of the values of the West, they've only become a lot more relevant now as society becomes more divided. So, I've decided to re-release the interview. I hope you all enjoy.
I don't think that you can understand the current situation properly without considering the role that postmodernism plays in this. Because postmodernism, in many ways, especially as it's played out politically, is the new skin that the old Marxism now inhabits. So you could think that there's a postmodern philosophy, which we'll talk about a bit, that really came into its vogue in the 1970s after classic Marxism, especially of the economic type, had been so thoroughly discredited that no one but an absolute reprobate could support it publicly anymore. Even the French intellectuals had to admit that communism was a bad deal by the end of the 1960s. And what happened was that they played a sleight of hand game in some sense and rebranded themselves under the postmodern guise. And that's where identity politics came from. And so, and then that spread like wildfire from France, especially into the US, through Yale University, through the English department there, and then everywhere. And so what happened was, there was this idea that the Marxists had put forth that the natural landscape of economic landscape is a battle. And it's a battle between the proletariat, the working class, and the bourgeois. And that that economic systems were doomed to continue to enslave people and to keep them poor and downtrodden unless there was a radical economic transformation that was predicated on something more like equity policy. And then that was put into place in many, many places, as you no doubt know, throughout the 20th century, with absolutely murderous results. It was the most destructive economic and political doctrine, I think, that has ever been invented by mankind, and that includes National Socialism, because the absolute magnitude of the havoc wreaked by the communist systems exceeded that wreaked by Hitler. And that's, I mean, Hitler didn't have quite as long a time to pull his stunts off quite as effectively, but it was a catastrophic system. And one of the things that's quite interesting is that the full breadth of that catastrophe is not something that students are well taught in our current educational system, which has always made me very suspicious. For example, the students I teach usually know nothing at all about what happened in the Soviet Union under Stalin between, say, Stalin and Lenin between 1919 and 1959. They have no idea that millions, tens of millions of people were killed and far more tortured and brutalized by that particular regime, to say nothing of Mao. So look, what happened was that by the end of the 1960s, the evidence that communism was a catastrophic failure was so overwhelming that even the French intellectuals, and we'll return to them later, like because the French have a very long-lasting and powerful public intellectual tradition, and so intellectuals there are very influential. Even the French intellectuals like Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, the famous philosopher, had to admit by the end of the 1960s that the Stalinist, communist, Maoist experiment and all of its variants, not just those particular dictators, but all of its variants, was an absolute catastrophic failure. And then what happened was the postmodernists came onto the scene, and they were all Marxists, but they couldn't be Marxists anymore because you couldn't be a Marxist and claim that you were a human being by the end of the 1960s. And so they started to play a sleight of hand, and instead of pitting the proletariat, the working class, against the bourgeoisie, they started to pit the oppressed against the oppressor. And that opened up the avenue to identifying any number of groups as oppressed and oppressor, and to continue the same narrative under a different name. It was no longer specifically about economics. It was about power. And everything to the postmodernists is about power. And that's actually why they're so dangerous, because if you're engaged in a discussion with someone who believes in nothing but power, all they are motivated to do is to accrue all the power to them. Because what else is there? There's no logic, there's no investigation, there's no negotiation, there's no dialogue, there's no discussion, there's no meeting of minds and consensus. There's power. And so since the 1970s, under the guise of postmodernism, we've seen the rapid expansion of identity politics throughout the universities. It's come to dominate all of the humanities, which are dead as far as I can tell, and a huge proportion of the social sciences. And we've been publicly funding extremely radical postmodern leftist thinkers who are hell-bent on demolishing the fundamental substructure of Western civilization. And that's no paranoid delusion. That's their self-admitted goal. And I've identified, not only me, obviously, but one of the main players in this entire drama is a French philosopher named Jacques Derrida, who I think most trenchantly formulated the anti-Western philosophy that is being pursued so assiduously by the radical left. And I think its dangers I don't think its dangers can be overstated. And I also don't think the degree to which it's already infiltrated our culture can be overstated. I mean, the people who hold this doctrine, this radical postmodern communitarian doctrine that makes racial identity or sexual identity or gender identity or some kind of group identity paramount, they've got control over most low to mid-level bureaucratic structures, and many governments as well. But even in the United States, where a lot of the governmental institutions have swung back to the Republican side, the postmodernist types have infiltrated bureaucratic organizations at the mid to upper level. And that's actually what they're trained to do by their activist professors in university. And if you want proof of that, you can just go onto the websites of women's studies groups, for example, because they're some of the top offenders, and just look at what they say. Well, but that's the issue, is that caring for someone or for a group of people is a very complicated thing. And it doesn't always mean be compassionate and feel sorry for them because they're downtrodden. It's not good enough. Like a lot of the structures that we've put in place to help people over the long run are rather harsh in their operations in the short term. I mean, so the values that are associated with trait conscientiousness, for example, which are reasonably good predictors of more conservative leaning political belief, aren't warm, fuzzy virtues. They're cold, hard, judgmental virtues. They're the demands for performance, for example, that go along in the workplace. But if you want to take care of an infant who's crying, you want warm, instantaneous, impulsive compassion. Because there's a problem and it needs to be solved right now, and you have the solution, right? The baby's too hot, the baby's too cold, the baby needs to be fed. You can fix that right now. If you're dealing with systemic problems of poverty, for example, or trying to determine how to produce more opportunity for everyone to benefit from everyone's abilities, you have to use a hell of a lot more than compassion to get there. And so to think of community in the positive sense as being driven by nothing but empathy, which is really one of the central arguments of the postmodern types, at least that's what's driving some of their argumentation, is it's an absurd proposition. So it's not so much that they confuse the two things, is that they fail to differentiate the concepts to begin with. It's very, very difficult to build functional structures that help people thrive individually and socially over long periods of time. And merely being empathetic, man, that's just going to get you nowhere. A 3-year-old is empathetic. And I'm not dismissing that. Empathy is important, but as a problem-solving mechanism, it has very, very limited utility.
Yeah. Well, this brings me back to, we talked briefly about, nationals.
Okay, and we'll have more on that in the upcoming weeks. The person who did that interview basically chopped that interview up into segments based on what Dr. Jordan Peterson was talking about. And soon we'll not be able to call him doctor because he'll be stripped of that title, as these postmodernists do, because they have infiltrated, as Jordan Peterson said, pretty much every institution, including the one he belongs to, in which Stephen disagrees with Dr. Peterson, and he says they should be called post-Marxist modernism or modernists. So I'd love to see a debate between Stephen and Jordan Peterson. So anyone who'd love to see that as well, and maybe he can be advised by Dave as well on how to go about that debate. I would love to see that. I'd probably pay thousands of dollars to see that, and I'd love to air it publicly. So we'll get in touch with Jordan Peterson. Maybe we'll let him know a little bit of the background of the show, and he's always looking for people to debate him, and everybody's backing down usually from debating him, but it looks like Stephen took a stab at it, so it'd be really great to see a debate there. These post-modernists, which I will go along with Jordan Peterson's definition as opposed to Stephen, just because I think Jordan Peterson probably has a little bit better grasp on this than Stephen does, but I'll just go with his definition. But I think they have infiltrated all of our institutions, or so many of them that they are making a huge impact in our world, which I do believe Justin Trudeau is part of that whole thing. Globally, it's something that you need to be aware of because it's coming for you. And you can see it already in our mainstream political correctness and media and all the words, all the buzzwords that they put in, and they're sifting everyone out into identities, and everyone's a victim. And you can see their playbook being played out exactly like Mr. Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson has set out. So we'll have more on that in the upcoming weeks, and we'll keep our finger on the pulse as he does make this re-education that he's going through public, and we'll have more on that. More on local stories, news, weather, and sports tomorrow, and more abroad issues abroad, and your comments. And we'll have some fun with it as we were able to have today. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow, God willing. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU. Have a great one, everyone. Ciao.
This is Sudbury Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.